I made some updates over the weekend to our free utility labels indicator. These updates make the indicator a little bit smarter, a little bit more friendly and easier to use, and they make the indicator faster, which was a major pain point for a lot of folks. I'll walk you through all of the updates I've made and where you can download the new version of the indicator in today's video. Now let's start by first talking about where you can download the indicator in case you'd like to follow along with all the updates I talk about. You can do so on our website, that's tosindicators.com/indicator/market-pulse. The Market Pulse tutorial contains both the Market Pulse along with the utility labels. Now inside of the downloads folder, you'll find not only the new version of the indicator files, but I've also added in an archived folder with the old version for those of you that for some reason prefer that version to the new one. Now let's start by talking about what's new and different in this new version. Now first off, there's 4 different versions of the indicator file, and you can pick and choose the one based off of whatever your machine's specifications are. So however powerful your system is will dictate which version of the indicator you use. For those of you that have really powerful machines, you can use the TI_utility labels version, which is the master version. That's the one I have loaded on my charts, and it contains all of the labels we'll talk about. Now, if you have a slightly less powerful machine, or maybe you're on a laptop or something of that sort, or you find that these labels just tend to slow down your performance, then you can use any one of these 3 breakdowns, which takes all of the different labels that we have and it groups them into 3 different groupings. So you can have the utility labels for just the index markets, the utility labels for just the sectors, which is the one I think most of you would be using, and then the utility labels for just the internals. For those of you that are day traders, you might find that a little bit more useful instead of keeping track of additional labels that just slow down your system. So pick and choose the one based off of not only what markets you care about, but also your actual performance on your machine. Now you have the benefit to customize that. Now for those of you that are using the master file, you can still customize the labels because I've added a few new input fields here. Now if I were to say turn off the index markets here and I click OK, you should see that these labels right here, these 4 labels disappear. So if I click apply, you now see we have just the sectors. So even here you can customize the labels based off of just what you'd like to see if there's a mix and match that you care about. So for example, maybe you don't care about the TRIN, maybe you don't care about the semiconductors, maybe you don't care about the transports, but you do care about the sectors, and maybe you care about the put-call ratio. I can click apply and that will automatically customize the labels where I have, if you take a look up here, just the sectors and just the put-call label. Now for those of you that are doing this with the multiple indicator files, you can do the same thing where you can load in the sectors, you can load in the internals, and you can customize which of the internals you'd like to see. Now speaking of internals, there's also 2 calculation updates that I made, where if you come into the internals portion of the code, the first is around the TRIN. Originally, when we were checking whether or not this TRIN is overly bearish or bullish with the 2 ratios, we were using the close price of the candle for the TRIN ratio. I've updated that where for the bearish, instead of using the close price, we're using the high of the candle and checking if that value is greater than 2. And then the inverse for the bullish scenario where we're checking the low of the candle. I think this will allow the labels to be a little bit more accurate, and I think that small change will be quite useful for those of you that use the TRIN. Now at the put-call ratio, I've also made one change where we used to compare for our overly bullish value, the put-call ratio, the 10-period SMA value to 0.85, and I've updated that to 0.75, which I think is a little bit more accurate of a gauge given the recent volatility we're seeing. So ignore all of the labels at the top, but if I show you the put-call ratio, this is where 0.85 is, and this is where the labels we're plotting or comparing the value against, and I've updated that to now be 0.75, and I think that does a little bit better gauge of helping us predict where the put-call ratio is in territory we care about. Now there's 2 last features that I want to share. The first one is around what you see inside of the labels. You should notice the labels are a little bit more human readable. They actually contain what the sector is, for example, along with the symbol. And I've removed what used to be plotting here, which was, I believe, the market pulse price. I thought that was not really all that useful, or actually it wasn't even the market pulse price, it was the current symbol's price. You can get that information elsewhere. Instead, make these labels a little bit more human readable so that when you look at a glance, you can easily tell, well, this is what this market is currently in a stage of. Now, the last update that I've made to our sector file in particular is the order in which you see these labels. These labels are now plotting in order from their greatest weight to their least weight, and you can see that mapping right down here. So for example, inside of the SPY XLK, greatest weight, healthcare, then we have financials, then consumer discretionary, and this goes all the way down to real estate. So those labels have been rearranged so that I think when you look at it at a glance, you can see, well, what is the heavily weighted sector doing? Well, what is the second heavily weighted sector doing? So on and so forth, and make your way down from left to right. So those are all of the major updates that I've made to our utility labels indicator files. One more time to recap, you now have 4 different versions of the file. These smaller breakdowns are going to be much faster and the ones that I think you would want to use primarily. Choose if you want the index markets, the internals, the sectors. You can turn on certain labels, you can turn off certain labels, but that will allow you to be a little bit more nimble and have faster charts. Inside of the sectors, we've rearranged the labels so they're a little bit smarter in order from greatest weight to least weight. The labels themselves are more human readable. And inside of the internals, we've updated the TRIN and the put-call ratio calculation so that they provide us a little bit more useful information. One last time, you can find the download link in the description box below, and it's available here as well, tosindicators.com/indicator/market-pulse. The utility labels is completely free along with the market pulse, so be sure to check it out if it's something you think would be beneficial to your trading. Take care, everyone. Good luck trading, and I'll see you in our next update.